What up, Doe? What up, Doe?
Hello,
Hey, hey,
hello.
hey.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to episode 43. Episode 43, that is, of Uncomfy Truths. I'm your co-host, Conservative Brother Daily, back for another one. We missed a week here, but, we back at it again. We all got family lives, work going on. So we're trying to stay consistent as we can. And then, like I said, we're going to have we're in the process of getting more short form content to be able to post more frequently on our channels. But appreciate rocking, have you guys rock with us. I'm Conservative Brother Daily, here with Conspiracy Brother. How you doing, good sir?
I'm doing well, man. As you said, glad to be here and, trying to fit in where we can. Life happens, things happen, but glad to be here with you three or you two, looking at the three pictures.
Yep.
You two brothers.
Yep.
To
Fit
sharing
in
these
where
moments.
you get in. For sure, brother. Pastor William Green, welcome back as always. How you doing?
Honored to be here once again. Looking forward to an invigorating dialogue.
Oh yeah. We're blessed and highly favored, and we're here to continue spreading uncomfortable truths. Like I think a little line that I reiterate a while back: spreading spreading common sense in a nonsense world. That's my motto. Spreading common sense in a growing nonsense world. So we got a lot of topics to get to. Since our last session. So let's definitely get into it. Pastor Green, if you could pray us in real quick, and we'll
Absolutely.
kick things off.
Absolutely. And dear Lord, we just thank you once again that you have brought us together, Father God, to discuss the issues that affect all of us. So I just pray, Lord, that as we discuss these issues, that you will open the eyes and the minds of people everywhere who will listen. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, let's get into it. Once again, really quick, guys. You guys are watching Uncomfy Truths. I know me and Conspiracy Brother, we probably need to update our banner. We got to definitely add Pastor Green on there. But we actually co-host. We do these live streams bi-weekly. So typically we've been doing it on Sundays as of late. So Conspiracy Brother, if you can share my screen, I'll just do a quick plug. Feel free to follow us on Rumble as well as YouTube, and we are also streaming on Odyssey. Those guys that need something a little more fringe, if you will, a little more off the grid. Odyssey's kind of growing out here as well. So with that, let's just jump right in. All right, our first topic. Federal judge update. So it's been a whirlwind of these, what I think Pastor Green coined activist judges. Last few weeks has been a lot of, obviously, last few months has been a slur of executive orders, and then the ones that are being the most detested. Oh, shout out Krista, welcome. She says, "Hey, fam, good to see you." And yeah, basically now the latest one is about El Salvador. Apparently, there was this guy who was tied to the MS-13 gang. I think he was a barber, former gang member of the MS-13. But at the same time, I think he'd been here for 30 years. Was here had I think a valid work permit, but was still came over here legally. Part with links to the MS-13 gang, or maybe he was cutting somebody's hair in a barber shop when they busted all of them. But apparently he's in El Salvador, and they're still fighting all that, fighting to get him back over. And my biggest thing, honestly, is just the audacity of, and I think I forgot this is one clip that was played that really broke down how these federal judges really don't have the power. I mean, Trump can just say whatever, maybe they'll throw some more lawfare at him, but they really don't have like the authority to just be like you're a federal judge in a district or a zone. You can't just order the president to do what you want. So I think obviously there's some gray area there, but I'd love for you two to go ahead, whoever wants to go first, and just or maybe Pastor Green, whoever wants to give their thoughts on these insane far left judges and how they're being funded and how they always end up getting these cases. You know, talk about like judge selection is really, really shady. So, Pastor Green,
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
And you know, in this particular case right here, how these judges are actually breaking the law. Because in the case of this illegal who they sent to El Salvador, first of all, he is not entitled to due process. Due process is the right of American citizens. This individual, whether he was an MS-13 gang member or not, it's irrelevant. He's still here illegally. And this Judge Boebert, to order the plane to turn around. I mean, think about this. The plane is halfway around the world. And this judge thinks he has the authority to tell the planes to turn around.
Judge Bozo. I call him Judge Bozo Bozeberg.
Accurately appropriate name. I mean, this is where, as you said on the outset of this podcast, America has become incredibly insane. And it takes discussions like this to bring people to reality. This person is an illegal alien. And Trump clearly ran on that campaign promise where he stated he's going to get these illegals out of this country. And overwhelmingly, the American people sided with Trump. 83%, the last poll I looked at, 83% of Americans want illegals out of this country. And it's unbelievable that these judges, the judicial, is overstepping its powers by trying to order the executive branch, which is the president, as to what to do. Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief of the military. He has all the authority to deport illegal aliens. And when we see the language that some of these activist judges are using, you know, one female judge recently, her name escapes me, but she was saying, oh, the Nazis gave better treatment. This is crazy. This is crazy. The Nazis.
I don't think we gas chambered any of these illegal migrants, so I don't know where they're talking about better treatment.
Right. And I mean, come on. The Nazis gave better treatment. And then she had to go there, talk about, oh, this is racism. This is not racism. This is law enforcement. And see, this is in a way a good thing, because now we see that there needs to be reform in the judiciary. And I'm hoping that Congress will strip them of their budgets, as Speaker Johnson said they would do, because this nonsense has to stop. And I'm also shocked at at Supreme Court Justice Amy Barrett and Judge Roberts.
Yeah, she definitely showed her true colors.
These people know better. These are not American citizens. They are not entitled to anything. They're not entitled to due process. They're not entitled to citizenship. The only thing they're entitled to is deportation. Plain and simple. And when we see even this other illegal, this woman from Mexico, who Time named her one of the most 100 influential women of the year. She's illegal in hiding, flaunting the law. I mean, the mentality of these judges, the mentality of the Democrats, the mentality of the mainstream media, it's just sickening and it's frightening. And when I say frightening, to think that these people can affect policy, can affect law, when they can't even distinguish right from wrong according to legal standards. And yet these are judges. Now they're trying to say, oh, we have to bring this one individual back. For what? Just so he could be sent back again by what they term the right way? This stuff is insane. And it really has to stop. And as American citizens, we need to publicly demand that these judges let the president do the job that he was elected to do. And the only reason why they're coming at Trump, because they hate Trump. They have no legal basis in these decisions that they're trying to enforce. And there's another aspect of this I want to point out. A lot of these judges that are making these adverse decisions against Trump, they're not even American citizens themselves. They're not born here. I believe Judge Junkin, she comes from another foreign country. There's another judge. He was supposed to be the first Muslim judge. He's a Canadian citizen still. How are these judges even getting these appointments? They're not citizens of the United States. They're not even born here.
Well, a lot of those are Biden appointees, and not to cut you off, Pastor Green, but you said so much good stuff, and I tried to wait, and I tried to wait, and I tried to wait, and I couldn't wait.
Go ahead, brother.
Longer. But so that's an interesting thing that I think that I've really been thinking about. You know, you look at the Democratic Party. Biden said this either the run-up to the election in 2020 or after the election in 2020, when he had the conversation with all the civil rights, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see me, nobody can see me, civil rights leaders, right? And he said, you know, pretty soon there's going to be a lot of the country's going to be majority Hispanic, and you know, you're just going to have to get used to it. Talking to black people, and little did we know he meant that, because he was just going to be letting them come in illegally, right? Like when you heard that, you just thought, well, you know, reproduction patterns, basically, childbirth patterns, that Hispanics maybe have more children than other groups of people. So eventually, over time, they will, you know, have a majority in the country because of that. But no, he meant because he was just going to be letting them in. And you know, to bring that to the point you're talking about, and conservative brother, I'm putting an article in the chat that's relevant to this. That I thought you might want
to pull it up.
I don't know if you want to pull it up. Yeah, if you want, even just to read the title, you might find it interesting.
I got it.
But you know, you see, at least in the Biden administration, specifically, so many of the judges or judicial appointments are people who were not born in America, right? So they may be American citizens at this point, naturalized or whatever that process might have been. But they were not born. Did it come up?
Not exactly.
Not the specific story. Okay, let me see. I'll try to see if I can resend
it. Judge allows requirement. Everyone.
Yeah. Judge allows. Yeah.
Okay.
That one. What? They don't even want you to show that. No. Yeah. So on my, let's see. I can send you the link. I sent you the link in the group me. So if you want to try to pull it up from your computer and see if it'll come up there, because the link, I pulled it directly from the group me, and it pulls the article up. So maybe I missed a couple. Maybe I missed a couple numbers in the transition.
Let me try that way.
But what happens, and I think this is an underrated point of view when you look at this, and this is what I think you're trying to say, Pastor Green, is when you have people who aren't from America and they're being able to decide and interpret American law, and they do so without the American perspective, you know, our social perspective, right? The social cultural perspective of what it means to be an American, right? In America, we have a unique balance, I think, in the world of rugged individualism and a tight-knit community. You know what I'm saying? We have a balance of that, where we have our own individual freedoms and the rights that we believe that we all have as individuals to express ourselves, to be happy, life, liberty, free speech, Second Amendment, the right to privacy and things like that. And simultaneously, we also have, popular sovereignty and the idea of the greater good. But we all, being an American and being raised in this country gives you a up close and personal view of that perspective, right? It's something you can't learn in a classroom. You don't learn that as a Canadian who goes to law school in the United States and becomes a federal judge. You don't learn that as a person who comes from Taiwan and has an accent, or South Korea. One of the judges, forget their name, in Massachusetts, I think the district of one of the district judges in Massachusetts is something, I forget the name now, but they're Korean. They have a Korean accent, right? When they speak English, they have a Korean accent. And you're being tasked with interpreting United States federal law from the perspective of a United States citizen, with the historical context of what that means, and you're doing that as a first generation American, right? And I say first generation, but I feel like that implies that your parents brought you here as a child, or you were born here. What I am saying is you moved here as an adult and you became a citizen after college. I mean, I think you have to look no further than like Leanna Wynn, the doctor on CNN, who you always saw, who, famously said, that you should lock people who did not want to be vaccinated out of society, that you should force masks on people, that you should do all these kind of what we would consider in America, and by and large, most people who did not support the vaccine process, right? Some people still got vaccinated, and we're not supportive of the way that they were managed, right? And when I applaud those people who were willing to say, hey, I want to be vaccinated, I support the vaccine, but I also support anybody else's right to say no, anybody else's right to opt out of this. But she said she wanted people who didn't get vaccinated to make their lives harder. They should lose their jobs and all these other things. But she comes from Taiwan, right? So you have a woman whose parents are Taiwanese, potentially escaped from mainland China as a result of the Communist Revolution, bringing about that same mentality to America, right? And so this is the issue that we have, where you subvert the will of the American people and the spirit of America by having interlopers and infiltrators who, by every technical measure are able to be federal judges or whatever, because they're citizens, because they're adequately trained to the standard that the Senate approves and the president appoints. But when we get down to the brass tacks of it all, we don't know if that would be sufficient, right? You have to be born in America to be the president. You can't be born in another country. But we also would like a president who had a dual allegiance, right? A bone of contention. I don't think, now I may be wrong, and if we have any constitutional scholars, always, comment. But I don't know that you can even be president with dual citizenship, right? That was something that what's his name, Ted Cruz, he was going to have to, or he actually did give up his Canadian citizenship because he was born in Canada to two American parents. And there was going to be all this stuff about whether he could even be president, because I think his father was from Cuba and he was born in Canada. But you can't even have dual citizenship. But we allow the people who are supposed to interpret the law of the land in this country the opportunity to do so without the proper, what I think, requirement of citizenship. And me and conservative brother, we've had this dialogue off the show, and I think past episodes before you were so heavily involved, Pastor Green, about how you have so many members of Congress who have dual citizenship, and how that should be illegal. You should not be able to have, in my opinion, you should not be able to have a connection to a foreign country within a certain degree, 2 generations or 3 generations, to even serve in certain levels of government, right? Entry-level positions, maybe at the most, because you cannot be trusted to be fully invested in America. Your perspective, your allegiance is always going to come into question, right? And I know this is not what we're talking about. Would you see, even when we look at some of the stuff when people are talking about AIPAC and looking at some of the way the Israel lobby is controlling so many members of Congress, Thomas Massey being the only member of Congress who actually is willing and able to call out that type of corruption.
And I think also to give a little credit, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think she came out recently when they the Trump administration, they did a strike on that apartment building in Gaza, and I think she had mentioned she didn't take any AIPAC money.
Yeah,
she was like,
right.
We did not vote for this, So I think
And so that and you have this issue where you have people. I mean, I've shown this clip, and I could probably find it again, of Chuck Schumer speaking, I don't know if it's Hebrew or Yiddish, saying that I will as long as I'm in Congress, or as long as I'm in government, you'll always have a person protecting Israel. And imagine, I said to anybody, imagine anyone from any other country speaking that country's native language saying that in government. Imagine you had a Chinese member of Congress. Imagine you had a Muslim member of Congress, or a person from the Middle East. Imagine you had an African. Imagine you had a Black American, descendant of slaves from America, in Congress, get up and say, I'm always going to stand up for Black people in this country so long as I'm in government. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that Black people are protected and whatever. They would raise hell over that. But here you have a person from a foreign country, or at least representing a foreign country while in our government. And it's no big deal. But this is the kind of situation that we find ourselves in. And another thing I wanted to, so this kind of ties into my point. Another thing I think is interesting, the Democrats always present themselves as a party of Black people. Why aren't they promoting more Black American judges? Right? Is it because Black people aren't educated at the level that's necessary to become federal judges? And if so, how come the Democrats haven't done something within the cities that they control that are majorly populated by Black people? Detroit, Chicago, New York, LA. San Francisco is kind of changing now because it's so expensive. But cities like that, Atlanta, where you have these Democrat strongholds, and you have continually underfunded and inferior schools, and the education is bad, and the majority Black citizens in these areas, or if not majority Black, high populations or concentrations of Black people who are being constantly miseducated or undereducated or inadequately educated. But what you'll do is you'll get a judge to fill some other minority quota, some DEI quota from somewhere else. This is why DEI doesn't benefit Black people. This is why affirmative action didn't benefit Black people. And you heard me say on this show, I have not lost any sleep or shed any tears for its demise. It was smoke and mirrors. They used our history and struggle in this country to create a lane for other people to step on our backs to make a way for themselves. And I don't support that. I don't support a party that would do that. And I don't agree with that. Let the Democratic Party fail. So,
mic drop. Pastor Green, you want to say something?
Well, what we're seeing, and if we're not careful, what is happening in Europe, particularly in the UK, where again you have Muslims and they have dual citizenship.
Yep.
And they're taking over, bringing Sharia law, and we're seeing the seeds of the same thing happening now. I mean, look at Dearborn, Michigan. They took over that whole city. So America has to be run by Americans. I say that unapologetically. I feel if anyone holds any office with any authority, they should be American, or they should have loyalty to America. Because there's nothing wrong with someone coming from another country and serving, but they have to serve with the understanding that America is America. America is not the world. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing judges putting the world's priority over America's priority. And it has to stop. I mean, when you see this nonsense, they're saying this man has to come out of El Salvador prison, where he's from. He's from El Salvador, just to be brought back here to be sent out again. This is ludicrous, and it needs to stop.
Amen. Well, I don't think I got much else to say on that. Y'all pretty much tied that up in a bow. Oh yeah, conspiracy.
Because Pastor Green, like I said, he had a lot of good stuff, and it was just so much I tried to be quiet. But yeah, so this guy is from Salvador, right? So the argument the U.S. government is making is like he was here illegally. So he wasn't here legally in the first place. So that is a crime. Right. So even if he wasn't an MS-13 or whatever, the fact that he's here illegally is a crime, number one. Number two, he's in his home country. So the argument is, and I don't think the Department of Justice or I think the judge did not agree with this statement, but the judge said, the argument they made was, hey, if he wants due process, he's got to have that with his home country. Even now the argument, I was just watching the video actually before we started recording, but they're still saying, hey, we don't have control over whether he gets to come back. He's not a citizen. So this is not a diplomatic interaction in the same way if a U.S. citizen was detained in another country and we wanted him back. He's not an American. And in fact, he's at home. So we don't even have that type of wiggle room to demand that a foreign country release a citizen of theirs to us who is not a citizen of ours, right? And then the other thing Pastor Green just said, it was about this.
Also wanted to
know. Yeah.
I also want to know real quick, just the way they kind of do trickery with the language, because he technically came here illegally. Now, Eventually, he's been here for a while. Now they're saying who lived in the U.S. legally with a work permit. Like, no, he came across the border illegally, so he is an illegal migrant. So regardless if he ended up, paying taxes or whatever, got his work permit, end of the day, he still came in the country illegally. But just see how they kind of do the language,
And that's what I was going to say. So the thing about it, because we've had that conversation in the other group, and my thinking is, like if you're coming to this country as a legal immigrant, or like as a visitor or a tourist, right? Or if I go to a country as a tourist, and let's say, I get accused of a crime I didn't commit, I would still like to have the rights afforded to a citizen in terms of legal protection and whatever. So let's say, I go to Japan. If in Japan you have the right to an attorney and the right to remain silent and all this, a lot of Japan's constitution is really similar to ours because we helped them write their constitution after World War II. So I would like those same rights afforded to me as a tourist because, I legally visited your country and I want to be innocent until proven guilty, whatever. If you come into the country illegally, I don't think that should apply, right? Like that judge in, I think, Illinois, tried to say that illegal immigrants still had the right to bear arms, like trying to essentially bastardize the Second Amendment, right? Because how do you allow somebody illegally the right to bear arms in a country, right? They illegally entered the country. They are a criminal, right? So as you said, it's a way that they're trying to manipulate the language because you don't get to come into the country illegally and all of a sudden be made good. But that article I posted, it was saying judge allows requirement that everyone in the U.S. illegally must register to move forward. So the Trump administration was requesting, I don't know if it was a part of, I don't know if it was a part of one of the executive orders, that all illegal immigrants had to register with the federal government or face prison time and fines. And so this federal judge is allowing that to go forward. It was a 1940 act, like a alien. It was an act in 1940 called the Alien Registration Act. And I guess, they were trying to sue, saying it was unconstitutional, but obviously Trump is really just using a lot of laws that already exist. And so you've heard people say, and Pastor Green talked about it, the judge, I think it was Judge Zinnis, but I could be wrong, Xinis, Paula Zinnis or something like that, was trying to say, like, this is the fascism and all this stuff. But like, I was thinking about this, me and my wife were having a conversation about it. And even if it would have been rude and terrible during the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, if Hitler would have just told all the Jews, hey, you just got to leave. We just don't want to see you anymore. We're just deporting all of you. That would have been terrible, but it would have been a lot better than the alternative, which was what happened, right? If during slavery, they would have just said to all the slaves in America, hey, we're going to stop slavery, but you got to leave America, right? And let's say the colonialism was still happening on the continent. So they would have still gone back and maybe been colonial subjects of France, of Spain, of Portugal, of the United Kingdom, of the Netherlands, of whoever, right? Maybe that still would have been better than slavery, which we suffer in America, right? So when they say Trump is a fascist, Trump is an authoritarian, Trump is Hitler, but you're arguing to keep these people in this country rather than allow them to leave and essentially escape this fascist, Hitlerian, authoritarian figure, it seems weird to me, right? Like, your argument is that he's a fascist, so you should be forced to stay here with him, opposed to being forced to leave and go back to your respective countries where you come from, if he's so terrible. And so that's the kind of mental gymnastics that I think a lot of people don't think about when they hear them talk. When they hear the mainstream media talk. If Trump is so bad, it should be considered a blessing to be able to leave him, to be able to leave the country that he controls and presides over. But the argument from the left or the liberals or any of these groups who are fighting these orders is to allow these people to stay essentially in the frying pan or in the fire with Trump. That doesn't make sense to me, right? Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
No, exactly, because bottom line, these judges are basically proponents of anarchy.
Okay.
I mean, we have a blatant case of the inmates running the asylum. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, it's almost like that scene from I think the Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises. We had the Scarecrow playing the judge, just like judge, jury, executioner. All right, you guys are sentenced to walk on the Gotham River, just fall through the ice. It's like, it's just to a point where I think they're
There's
like
no
almost
law,
above the
there's no
law. I
order.
think they're above the law of the highest office in the land. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think they mentioned something about
deep about it. It's
I
treason.
think, yeah, because it's come down to these injunctions, and I think it was something like there had been, I don't know, there's some stat, I'm probably messing up the stat, but there was maybe 30 or something injunctions where a federal judge ruled against the president maybe like 2 or 3 times. And then when Trump, his first term in office, they did it like 30 times. And then like since he's been president the past 4 months, they've done it like 100 something times, where you just see this just unprecedented, these federal judges think they're can just veto the president, but let me not, get off on that. Anything else, guys, on this topic we want to cover? Or we move on?
Well, the thing that I see is that there has to be reforms, and These judges have to go. And this is why, as citizens of the United States, it's plain to see if we want law and order, we have to vote the Democrats out and vote Republican. It's plain and simple. Because the Democrats are crazy.
Cray. Yeah, I mean the Uniparty is crazy as well. We definitely call out the Republicans as well. Some these Randy Fines and these Lindsey Grahams, insane. But yeah, definitely Democrats. They are not on my side at all. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead. Conspiracy brother, anything else before we move on? Conspiracy brother.
Yeah,
All right, cool. All right, good stuff. All right, y'all. Next topic. Let's get into these Trump tariffs and the China trade war that's interrupted our regularly scheduled programming. So, what a time to be alive! As you guys know, we had Liberation Day, I believe, last week. It felt like it was last week. It felt like 2 months. If people, those that are really into the stock market, Now, obviously, Liberation Day came. I think last Tuesday or last Thursday. Obviously, the stock market fell, took a little bit of a tumble, came back a couple of days later. You got Shifty Adam Schiff talking about, oh, there might be some inside trading and all that. And you just open up a can of worms, But basically, I think it's pretty impressive. The times we're living in, once again, whether you hate him, whether you like him, Trump definitely is kind of playing this game like hard. There hasn't been another president that has stood up to China in this way that I don't think we've ever seen before. And it's just very interesting. I think if anything, once again, I think Trump's still made some mistakes. He's still gonna be making a lot of mistakes. But at the end of the day, I think what was most impressive or telling about this tariff trade war is really exposing China, exposing them for the bad actor they are, and how once again the tariffs went up for everybody. He rose it up. What was it, like 80%? I forgot the numbers. Don't quote me on the numbers. But basically, everybody got rose tariffs. Then a day or two goes past. I think it was some 90 countries called the White House to come to the table. All right, let's negotiate. We could play more fair. And guess who's still holding out? China. Retaliatory tariffs. And next thing you know, China's the one left holding the bag because everybody else is like, hey, we about to just fall in line. So I think on surface level, I know Conspiracy Brother, you and me talked. I still was a little weary. Different people that were following as far as like the long-term effects. I think we still got some rough waters. But I think overall, even Kevin Leary talked about how it did it was something where like it's like now or never. We need to just rip the Band-Aid off instead of trying to do this slow walking toward that. Next thing you know, 2026, and Trump's getting, impeached after midterm. So I think this was genius. I think once again, it just shows that now China is the one who's in the hot seat. And, we still got a ways to go. But I want to go ahead and get everybody's thoughts. Pastor Green, go right ahead. What were your initial thoughts on this Trump tariffs, China trade war so far?
I think it's a good thing. I was looking at a speech that Nancy Pelosi made on the floor of the Senate in 1996, and she was saying the same things that Donald Trump is saying today. But now, because Trump is saying it, now it's wrong. I mean, the hypocrisy of it. And let's be for real. What does China produces that we really need, that we can't make here? Name one thing. And I think after we know that they were responsible for COVID, I really think we just need to cut all economic ties to China because they're responsible for deaths around the world. And it blows my mind to think that we allow them to make medical products for our consumption. That is crazy. It really is. And you think about this. If it's not for America, China could not survive. They have no jobs for their people of their own creation. Every major job. Matter of fact, they're all factory jobs that need to be brought back to America. Okay, whether it be Apple, Nike, whatever, those jobs need to be brought back here. And basically, what Trump is saying, America should be first. If it's not made here, then yeah, we're gonna tax it. We're gonna put a tariff on it because it is unfair. Okay, we have Toyotas and every other kind of car in America here in America, but you don't see no Chevys, you don't see no Fords in China. We have to accommodate them every step of the way. We even have to have permission to have certain American-made movies shown in China. So we've been allowing this to go on for decades. And Trump is the first president that wants to put an end to it and make everything fair. And if you make it fair, then China's in trouble because nothing that they make over there, we need in this country. We can make it on our own. The only reason why things are produced in China because what? You have cheap labor and you have slave labor in China. This should have been ended decades ago. Especially now we know how they make their products. I mean, people are making 15 cents an hour. That's unheard of. And the fact that they don't want to pay Americans decent wages, this is why all these jobs have been outsourced in the first place. So, all the fear mongering, all the hype saying, oh, the economy is going to crash if we have these tariffs. Listen, we're already in a recession. The economy is not going to crash because basically we don't need T-shirts from Vietnam. We don't need medical supplies and phones made in China.
And Pastor Green,
it needs to be made in the USA.
Pastor Green, hate to interject, but I think you brought up a great point on how, like, hey, remind everybody, a lot of these like short memory hold people is that, yeah, we already been in a recession. We've been in a recession since 2022 under the Biden administration.
Yes,
Who drained the strategic oil reserve? Who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline? Who decided that we're good, like, all the stuff that he did? I got a whole laundry list. But obviously, change the definition of a recession. Change the definition of a recession. Even though we had like down market over I think it was like 2 GDP quarters or whatever it was. Anyway, they changed the definition of a recession, and they pretended and they covered up for Biden, and all that's coming out about not only Biden's mental capacity, but how they covered up the recession that was midway through Biden's term anyway. But anyway, I just want to kind of reiterate that because people acting like the recession wasn't started like 2-3 years ago. Anyway,
we've been in a recession. We've been in a recession. So, we just need to stop this nonsense and just let Trump do his job. And I think Trump is effective in what he's doing when you consider that 70 countries are coming to the table to make a deal. So this nonsense about fear-mongering over tariffs, listen, Trump is doing what everyone knows needed to be done. But because it's Trump doing it, now it's the wrong thing. And that needs to stop. And I yield.
Right. Conspiracy brother, you have the floor.
Yeah, so this is something that I followed for a very long time. I'm really involved, like in worker stuff. I'm pro-union personally. My father retired from the auto industry, so I am familiar with the effects, and where we live in Michigan in the Midwest, understanding how outsourcing has really hurt American workers, right? Ultimately, the question you have to ask yourself, whether you're pro-worker, pro-union, whatever you have to ask yourself is this: do we live in a country or not? Does the president represent American citizens and their interests as a whole or not? Does he represent the interests? Is he supposed to represent the interests of the rich and the elites or not? Because even we have a comment that says iPhone could cost $3,500. It could, but why could it? And what does that say about the pay of American workers who would be making those iPhones, right? Wouldn't pay also be going up to compensate for the change in price of the device? Or wouldn't CEO pay have to decrease in a way that is meaningful to offset the cost? Or wouldn't there have to be some other mechanism? Because ultimately what we're saying, and Pastor Green, you really hit a lot of great points again. So I got to give you credit again, because you really on I mean, you know, if we playing basketball, you giving me lobs and I'm just slam dunking them. I hope I'm not bouncing them off the rim. But you know, like you said, the labor cost in China is low, right? Now, let's say I'm sympathetic to the communist. Let's just say I'm sympathetic to the communist ideology. I still recognize I don't live in a communist system, one, and two, China exploits its people in a way that I would not like to see happen in America, right?
That part.
So what that will do automatically is give them an unfair advantage as it pertains to production and industrialization. And so automatically, so one take gang is saying if we stay with China making them do the tariffs. Okay. So I think I was misunderstanding. But so here I'll pull it up because I put up all those other comments. So if we stay with China making them do the tariffs. So yeah. With tariffs, they could have been up to 3,500. Correct.
Yeah. Shout out to One Take Gang. Thanks for the comment.
But so you have a situation where the Chinese government is able to force people to work in conditions that you cannot replicate in the United States. And as I said, nor would I want to. And so if we're allowing corporations and elites to shift jobs to the lowest cost producers in order for them to make money, because you look at Nike, right? Let's say, I think I was watching the short and there was somebody in China. He was saying like Nike only pays like $1 to make a shoe or $2 to make a shoe. And they charging $200 to sell their shoes. You know, they're not passing that cost savings on to you as a consumer. So theoretically, they could be paying an American worker $20 to or their cost per shoe, because that cost wouldn't directly equal to $50 per shoe, but that cost could impart $50 into the manufacturing process of the shoe, which could be paying an American worker $20 an hour or $30 an hour. I don't know. And maybe the cost of the shoe would go up to $10 and to 10 to 20 extra dollars, right? So you make it a $210 to $220 shoe. And then you've got an American worker working an American job, making a product in America where they can afford to buy that shoe. And they produce that shoe. And it sustains that community of people, because it's not only the workers in that factory, in that community, but it's the people who work at the restaurants around that factory or who work at the stores or whatever, who will be sustained because that factory is sustained, right? There are all these ancillary jobs and businesses that are affected by a successful factory. It's not just the factory. It's not just the factory worker, but because you have those factory workers, their communities will be better. One take gang again, one pride, exactly. Your community will be strengthened by the taxes you're able to pay, right? Your schools will be better. Your children will be better, right? And so these are all the things that come with that. But if we allow businesses and corporations to set the tone for the average American citizen, they still charge you get to save $10 and you lose out on an opportunity of a career. And so this is what the president of the United States of America is fighting for, or at least he appears to be fighting for the future of the American worker. All these other countries have tariffs. China has a policy that if you want to sell goods in China, you have to build factories in China. They have taken it a step over tariffs, and this is why Trump is saying this. But it's a step above tariffs. If you want to sell in China, you got to build the factories in China. That was the rule. It was a step above tariffs. You couldn't even sell in China unless you produced the products in China. And all the American businesses and all the other Western businesses shuttered production in their own countries, destroyed their own communities, hollowed out their own middle classes so that they could make money in China. America is the largest consumer market on the planet, and that means something. And it is about time that we have, as Pastor Green said, as conservative brother said, it's about time that we have a president who's willing to wield the power of our consumption for our benefit. You should have to pay to sell in this country, right? You should have to jump through all types of hoops to get a part of this market. And if you think it's so easily replaceable, why do we have a middleman? This is America. The One Take Gang might have to be the fourth guest on the show because he has got some heat in the comments.
Little foreshadowing. Yeah.
Why should we have to be? We have the largest consumer economy in the world. 315 million or so, depending on how many illegal and undocumented people are here in this country, who are buying things, leveraging credit to buy things, even at the highest levels, are buying things. That does not happen anywhere in the world. It doesn't happen in China. China's population may be 3 times the size of ours, but they don't have the buying power. India may have a population that dwarfs ours 3 to 4 times, but they don't have the buying power. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the system set up so that you can make sure when you're purchasing goods that you can be sure that your purchase is going to be received and that your order will be given to you and you're not going to get scammed. And then if you are scammed, you have a reasonable remedy for that scam. They don't have that. America is unique. And so we need to leverage that because American people are dying. We are sending billions of dollars all over the world to give aid and help. And American citizens are dying. America's cities are falling apart. And one of the things that kind of galls me, you go online and you see Europeans laugh. You see Europeans laugh. Oh, Americans are so lazy. Americans, they don't know anything. We subsidize their defense. Americans don't have health care. Americans don't have affordable higher education, whatever good things Europeans think they have. We don't have them because we subsidize their military. We subsidize their defense. We subsidize their ability to sell products in our market. And we don't have that same opportunity to flood our products into their market because we have a larger production capacity in our country than anybody in Europe. Right? So they have the opportunity for all these protections that we don't, even Canada. Canada puts exorbitant tariffs on American dairy, for example. And we're not allowed to do that. They're allowed to flood our market with Canadian products, and we're not able to produce enough milk and butter and cheese or whatever to flood the Canadian market, which we could do. Canada has 10% of the U.S. population. We could overproduce products for Canada and put every Canadian producer out of business without government intervention.
Yes, we could.
But they don't want to work together with the United. They want to leech off of us. And every other president we've ever had has been okay with that because they have leached off of us too. Because they've
Did
only
y'all see what Kevin O'Leary said on CNN?
I watched so many of his clips. I may have missed this one specifically, but if you know where it is, you can pull it up.
Yeah, let me pull that up.
I think it definitely
Yeah,
be
that's
worth.
Yeah, he want 400% tariffs.
yeah, he called for 400%. Like, let's go.
Yeah, and that's true because you think about it. The only adverse effect of tariffs is on corporate profit, corporate greed. We need to bring back the steel industry in America. If we brought back the steel industry in America, that would change the economy will boom. But we let these corporate barons outsource all these jobs at the expense of America, and look how we've been suffering. Look how the auto industry has nearly been decimated because we just thwarted the steel industry, just gave it to China. We gave the auto industry to China. And without us, Chinese citizens, they wouldn't survive. And Trump knows this. They wouldn't survive. You close a factory in China, oh, listen, let enough factories close in China, they're going to have civil unrest because their whole economy is based on factory jobs. But those are our jobs for American people. I'm tired of all this outsourcing, and them tariffs are going to correct it.
All right, I think I found the clip. Hold on, give me a moment. Yeah, shout out to Kevin O'Leary over at Shark Tank. I mean, he was good on calling out, even back when it was heavy doing the lawfare, about Mar-a-Lago's only worth 18 million. We're gonna get you for real estate fraud, and the banks are like, yeah, they paid us back. We have no issue. There's no victims. Then the city of New York's coming after him. So he was good calling that out back then. So now he's here calling out a little more foolishness. I'm not gonna play the whole clip, but I want to at least get that part where I think it's about midway through. So let me see if I can find it where he calls out specifically China and basically how they steal IP, how they've been robbing us for years. But isn't new information, but let me go ahead and pull it up.
What happens if we go? Basically the gun on the Resolute desk. American.
Do you guys hear it? Okay.
We hear. I hear.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Moving manufacturing back to the U.S. takes a long time, but I'm still focused on two aspects. I mean, you have to differentiate the tariffs negotiated between countries because the Eurozone just 48 hours ago said something remarkable. For the first time in decades, we're willing to go to 0 on 0. That means they open up all markets to all products, all services. That's a huge win. So forget about Israel or Thailand or Cambodia. We're talking about one of the largest economies on earth saying, okay, we get the joke. You want to sell cars? You want to sell a Corvette in Berlin? We're okay at 0. We've never had that before. So let's call that a huge win. We haven't done the deal yet, but let's get the German people over here to start negotiating that. Agriculture in Britain will go to 0 on 0. Canada, we'll love to do energy 0 on 0. So that's a huge win for him. Huge. He hasn't even taken advantage of it yet.
I thought, Kevin, part of it, I'm curious from your perspective and everyone, if one of the biggest assets of a negotiation is leverage, if he has said they're here to stay, does that remove some of the ability for him to negotiate in the long run with these countries?
Well, I'm trying to differentiate between the trade non-parity. For example, you talk about Thailand. I have a company that makes greeting cards. Hewlett-Packard laser cutters making greeting cards in Thailand because labor's cheap, and we FedEx them every day here. They only have an economy of 35 billion, and the deficit is 200 billion. That country will never have trade parity with us. It's too small. But we can go to 0 tariffs with them. And I'm telling you, there's a difference between getting everybody at 0 on 0, which is free trade basically, which for Trump would be a huge win. That call 48 hours ago, when the Eurozone said, okay, uncle, we'll go to 0, take that win. It's a huge win. Now, getting trade deficits settled, that's going to take decades because We are the largest economy on Earth by a factor of 2.5 times. We're always in a deficit.
I also want to zoom out because I do think it's worth noting that there are many in Congress as well as the business community that are questioning if
I'm thinking
cheats and
here it is.
steals.
100% tariffs. What would
I
that look
want
like?
Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore.
Here it is.
Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. I'll tell you what, Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well, hold on. I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people,
All right, just wanted to kind of show that point. But yeah, Kevin brought up some good points. Thoughts? Anybody?
Well, he's Canadian, so I think that's even more important to understand that he's trying to be objective. Now, maybe he's got money, he's in real estate, and so who knows what he's trying to do, right? He's got a lot of money in a lot of different places,
Right.
But this is the thing that I want people to I want to stress, and I think he really highlighted it in a way that I can't. But let's say this fails. You had a president who failed trying, at least on paper, to do something good for the average American, right? You had someone who failed trying to make the country better for the average American worker. Because like I told you, we watched when you sent me that podcast of Peter Schiff.
Yeah.
The thing about a lot of libertarian economic theory and ideology, you're not going to be able to replace an economy like ours overnight. It's just not going to happen. We make up about a third. No. Sorry. We make up, 60% of global demand or something like that. It's some ridiculous number of consumption that we have. And I mean, you have to look no further than the fact that, every year a new car model comes out. Every year a new iPhone comes out, right? We don't have a country, and, by extension, we don't have an economy of see how long you can keep stuff, see how long it lasts, hold it forever, see how long it lasts. We have an economy of, hey, there's nothing wrong with this, but we got a newer one. It only does something slightly better. So, you can't replicate that. Canada can't do it. You know what I'm saying? They got 30 million people. Let's say all of them have good, high-paying jobs. Let's say 50% of the population has good, high-paying jobs, and they can just blow money. That's 15 million people. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
50% of our people in this country is just blowing money, even at the top. Even our very wealthy are living. They were saying, this article I was reading, even our very wealthy are living paycheck to paycheck because of the way our economy is set up, that desire. We're so good. The marketing and stuff is so good at making you want stuff that even our very wealthy are living above their means. But this is a very simple thing, right? Chinese factories are producing products for American consumption. You're not going to be able to replace that overnight, and Chinese people aren't buying it. For the most part, they're not even in a position to be able to buy it. Neither is India, right? And I'm just saying the two largest populations. You're not going to be able to dump all this stuff into Africa. You know what I'm saying? Most African people don't even have access to stable electricity and internet. So you're not going to be able to sell all your stuff on Temu and TikTok Shop and all this stuff and Alibaba Express in Africa either. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to do it in Mexico and Brazil because these are still places with such vast income inequality and wealth inequality that even those people, while they may have access to internet and to some degree and smartphone technology, they don't have the disposable income to be able to afford to buy these types of things. As much as we may joke about people's priorities in this country, where people have a new car and they don't live in a house, or they'll have nice clothes and a messed up car and a dirty house or something like that. That is what sustains economies for some of these countries. And China has built its reputation on production. And production is all well and good so long as you have something to produce. But it does not matter how many factories you have. You can travel all along the Rust Belt of the United States. It does not matter how many factories you have if there's no work to be done inside of them. They can be clean and new, but if nobody's importing any goods, nobody's importing any Chinese products because of the tariff, they're all going to sit empty. And all their economy, every economy to some degree is a pyramid scheme. Right? It just depends on how that pyramid is shaped. Is it upside down? Is it right side up? You know what I'm saying? But if the production falls off, what are they going to do? Just start retooling for the Chinese taste and sensibility? All of a sudden, you're going to just start making products that Chinese people care about? You have to completely and fundamentally change the Chinese sensibility. Right? Because they pride themselves on being the people who don't waste, who aren't loud, who aren't given to trends or whatever. You're not going to be able to replace this market in a quickly enough time for you. But in some ways, you expect the prime minister or president, I don't know what they have, Premier Xi Jinping, to flex his muscles because he doesn't want to appear weak in front of his citizenship. But at some point, like when you play chicken or whatever, when they do like the old Westerns and stuff, who's going to blink first? Something's going to give. And we live in a country where there's a vast abundance. We have a climate. We can grow all types of fruits and vegetation. We have all types of fish and wildlife that we can eat from all within our country. Even not including going to Alaska or Hawaii, where you can get tropical and, far northern animals and products and produce and things like that. But just within the lower 48, we have enough in this country to sustain us. If we wanted to just be a completely closed economy that we only produced and exported and imported within the boundaries of the United States, we have enough. But it, like Pastor Green is saying, it's the greed of the corporation that they want to make more money and pay less in labor. And when a company makes more money at the cost of its employees, that doesn't benefit the average American worker. It doesn't benefit the average employee of those companies. Nothing. It benefits the bottom line of those investors. It benefits the bottom line of the board members and the CEOs, etc. And we have to understand that. So we have a president who, at least, like I said, because you don't know people's intentions and motives, but on paper, and he said this, I have a video my father sent me from when he was on Oprah in the 80s saying, China's ripping us off and Japan is ripping us off in the 80s.
Yep.
So this is something that he's clearly believed and felt that our country was being taken advantage of in some kind of way. And I agree. And you look at the continued use of these free trade agreements. We've got 30 years of NAFTA. We can see that has not done what it was said to do. It did not improve the quality of life of people in low-income countries, specifically like Mexico. Right? It did not improve the quality of life of the vast majority of Chinese. What it did was allow the Chinese to corner the market on production of necessary and important products for the globe, especially for us. And you saw that no clearer than during the pandemic, when we had to get medical supplies and all kind of PPE and medication from China.
Yep.
That's insane. That's insane.
It's a national security risk.
Yep.
If for nothing more than the safety and health of the country, we should be able to produce for our own, a certain capacity for our own. And that's all I got.
Woo, conspiracy brother coming in hot. And then Pastor Green, appreciate your take as well. And that definitely remind me, I think a great point as far as like COVID should have been a huge wake-up call as far as like basically us being unprepared, not be able to provide our own masks, our own PPE. Obviously, masks, it was a big farce. But I mean, I don't know if y'all even heard about Fauci re-emerging from his lair and coming on and saying, hey, there's going to be something else coming around the corner. You know, they're already prepping for maybe H5N1 or a more deadlier COVID. But yeah, guess what? What if they try and release that to sabotage Trump's second term? And if we really need these, these medical supplies, now China's like, hey, you're on your own. You know, so it's better we just rip the Band-Aid off now than continue to try and, play second fiddle to China as we've been doing all these years, because once again, Trump talked about this for decades. That's a great commentary, y'all. All right, y'all, once again, small plug. Once again, y'all are watching UNCOMFY Truths. We do live streams every bi-weekly on weekends. Feel free to follow us on Rumble as well as YouTube. And we are also on Odyssey. See the little icon right here? Go find Odyssey if you want to be even more under the radar. It's a smaller, network coming up. All right. So next topic, y'all, we have this female fencer who apparently refused to compete against a biological male. I'll say trans woman or biological male. I'm not going to call her a woman because she's not. So this was getting a lot of fire on social media. Basically, the fencing company, USA Fencing, they're kind of getting a lot of heat right now for this female fencer who saw she was about to compete with a man, and she was like, you know what, let me bend the knee. She received what's called a black card, so I think it's like automatic suspension. Coach walked over to her like, hey, what are you doing? And she basically said very respectfully, hey, you're a man and I'm a woman. I'm not going to fight you. So obviously the right's eating this up. Obviously I think it's, brave on her part. I have a small take, kind of a take I thought was very interesting. I wanted to give on this. But Pastor Green, really quick, want to give your thoughts on this story?
Well, this is a complete violation of Title IX.
Yep.
The White House already said that men cannot compete against women in sports. So the fact that they conducted this competition in the first place, it should have never happened. The thing that we alluded to this before we came on the air is that one of the things that we have to stop doing, we have to stop talking the language of the left. We have to stop talking the language of crazy people. And who am I referring to as crazy people? People who call themselves trans. There's no such thing as a trans person. No matter what you cut off or add on, you're still a man or you're still a woman. There's no in between.
Yep.
Okay? We're not made of Play-Doh. Okay? So, you can't change anything. And one of the things that we need to start doing is calling these men women. There is no such thing as a trans woman. We need to call them what they are. He, she wannabes. That's what they are. And you know what we need to also start doing? We need to start shaming them. We need to start shaming them. And I really mean that. You're a male. You're a man. And you want to wear a dress, look like Little Bo Peep. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're a female and you want to wear a beard. You should be ashamed of yourself. There's something wrong with your thinking. Your thinking is corrupt. Your thinking is backwards. And again, we need to start saying enough is enough. If dude wants to look like a lady, that's his problem. But we should never accept that. I was watching something earlier during the week. I don't know if you gentlemen saw it, but this so-called trans teacher or this so-called male in the wanting to be a woman got in a confrontation with one of his students. And the student had enough sense to say, listen, you're a man. I don't have to address you as a woman. And this guy went off
As
because
they
he wanted
do,
to be addressed as a woman.
as
No.
they always tend to.
Yeah.
Claiming to be tolerant and inclusive, except when they disagree with you.
But it's poetic because it's just like the emperor, the story of the emperor, new clothes. It was a child that set the record straight and told him he was naked. And I really believe as our young people, we need to teach our young people not to fall for the indoctrination. We should not be calling men in dresses, men in wigs, women. Still called on men. Let them get mad and use their nonsense, talk about, oh, they've been misgendered. No, you're misgendering yourself. And we just need to say enough is enough. Men don't want to compete with men because they know they're mediocre. But because they're stronger than a woman, this is why they want to compete with women in the boxing ring. This is why they want to compete with women in women's sports, because they can't compete against real men. And they need to be called out for that, just that fact. And this stuff has to be called out, and this stuff has to be stopped. And I yield.
And great points, Pastor Grant. I just want to hit on the fact that you never see, it's always, the left always like to talk about disproportionately affected groups of people, or this group is disproportionately affected, unlike this one. But they always get a little quiet when you say, like, hey, it's funny how there's always a disproportionate amount of dudes, males, who are bottom last or 200th place in that particular sport, and then they go over to the women's side and all of a sudden they're number one and number two spots. Where are all the females who transition into males that want to run over to men's sports? How come we don't see half the amount of energy of women coming out saying, I want to play in men's sports and advocate for playing in men's sports? How come we never see nowhere near that same energy? If men and women are equal, once again, they're equal in speed, agility, strength, everything that the left and the John Olivers and all these people claim. Why is not, if they're equal, why not? Let's go ahead and put all these women that claim so. Why don't y'all play the men's team tomorrow? Where is that same energy? And I want to bring up another point too. I know Conspiracy Brother gonna get to you too. I just want to get this off my chest. Somebody, a pundit I follow online, brought this up too. I think an uncomfortable truth we do have to realize is that I think a lot of this going on, I think there are a lot of women that are maybe scared to speak. I think I won't say a lot. I say there are a group of women that are afraid to speak out, that know this is wrong, that are athletes that compete in this. And there's some that maybe remain neutral. But I think the problem is that a lot of times I think there's a lot of women that maybe play in these sports that are a little more agreeable or go along to get along. And I guess what? I think there's a lot of women that apparently, even in these female sports, that kind of like the idea of, oh, it's kind of like when women go off to college and they get their first kind of gay best friend. Or like, they like to go, women always run to the bathroom, 10, 12 of them holding hands together. They like to kind of have the camaraderie, or having like, oh, this male friend, or collect these gay best friends like they're, Pokemon or whatever. So I feel like the uncomfortable truth we have to also realize, while there are a lot of brave women, like a Riley Gaines, this Stephanie woman, There's a lot of women that are standing up for it, but I think there's also a lot of women, like almost the silent majority, that are silently like that are either like they're more concerned about camaraderie and being around other different men and women versus actually competing and winning. And they're kind of like they're go along to get along. Yeah, it'd be cool to kind of have a have a male have a male athlete who's kind of like one of the girls. So I feel like there's that thing going on where there's not as many women speaking out against it because deep down they're kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like having another gay best friend in college, or a bunch of girls going into the bathroom together, So I feel like there's that going on to where we're not getting the amount of women speaking up about it because deep down they're kind of just like passive about it, or there's kind of like, hey, it's like having another cool gay best friend. So I think that's an uncomfortable thing. That's an uncomfortable truth. I think we have to kind of at least call out, because I feel like there are more women that should be backing up a Riley Gaines, a Stephanie, and all this about it. So I want to kind of just get that off my chest because I feel like that's an underlying factor people aren't talking about. Conspiracy brother, your turn.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of torn about this, right? Because on the one hand, I have two daughters, I have two sisters, I have a mother, I have a wife. And so, like, I remember, 2015, 2016, when this conversation was first starting. And people were saying, no, this isn't about the bathrooms. Nobody wants to go to the bathrooms or whatever. And they were trying to make like that wasn't really a concern of anybody's, and everybody who was even asking about it was a weirdo. To like now, where you have literally like men are playing combat sports against women, and like, so for me, on the one hand, like, this is kind of the feminist dream. I think they want this outcome, and so a large part of me wants to just say, hey, well, this is what you wanted, so accept this, because this is this is what you wanted. So figure this out on your own, right? You don't want male involvement, and I guess this is not a male anymore, or a woman, or whatever you want to, whatever, right? Like, to be mean. And then on the other hand, it's frustrating because, I have daughters and stuff. So I would hate for my daughters, my wife, my sisters, my mother to be in a situation where they're having to share intimate spaces or compete against men, right? And so I'm somebody, I played sports. I started playing t-ball, as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, whatever age you start playing t-ball. And I played, t-ball, baseball, basketball, wrestling, football, track. Is that it? Played soccer some, do judo now. And so at various stages throughout my life, I've competed against females. I have trained with them, non-competitive training, just, practice. And I mean, there's just a difference. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. And even when you were saying like there's no female to males, there's actually a boxer, I forget her name, but born a female. And she boxed this guy. I think her record is like 1-3 or something. And ended up getting beat real bad. Well, no. She ended up beating this guy. But the guy looked like he might have even been drunk or something. Like, he was a terrible boxer in his own right. And it was like a slugfest. Like, it wasn't even like a knockout. So, I mean, you don't see that, because in order for a female to male to be competitive against a male, they would have to take such levels of testosterone that it probably would make it illegal for them to participate. Because like males can't take testosterone, to boost their abilities, right? That's illegal. Men can't do that. If I was to play football, when I was playing football, if I would have taken testosterone, I would have been disqualified, right? So there's only a certain level that a female could take, even to be allowed to compete. And so I think that's really the big reason why you don't see that. But at the same time, most male sports teams and leagues and stuff, the male category is considered open. So like women could play football on any team if they could make the team. Males teams are open because there's only one. There's not a female team, so it's open. It's open. But even like for the male basketball team, if a female could make the team, they could make the team. They can't, and so they don't. For baseball, if a girl could make the baseball team at a high school or college level or professionally, they would do it. They can't, so they don't. You see what I'm saying? And so we create this women's division essentially because women are not at the highest levels of competition at the level of men. And this person, Redmond Sullivan is their name, was like really bottom tiers fencing, like 400 ranked or something in fencing. And then after they started participating in the women's division, I think they were ranked like in the top 10 or something, or top 5 even. And so there are obviously benefits. This guy's like a giant compared to all these ladies. So he's got a longer reach. He's probably got quicker reflexes because men typically have quicker, our fast twitch muscles are better. Our reach, our a lot of different reaction times and stuff dealing with the fast twitch muscles are going to be better. So that's going to give you an advantage. And so, kind of what you were saying, conservative brother, I think there are a lot of women who do like this because if they didn't like this, they wouldn't participate. They wouldn't participate at all. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It wouldn't just be a situation where they said, hey, I'm not gonna, some of us, well, maybe we just don't like this, but we're going to be quiet. If all the women at these events took a knee, like what's her name? Stephanie Turner, I think. If they all took a knee like she did, they all took a knee like she did, there would be no men at these events. Right?
Right.
The swimming events, the volleyball events, all of this stuff. If the girls there took a knee, but this reminds me of 1984. I can't remember the quote verbatim, but it talked about how the women, especially the young ones, seem to be the most loyal to the party. And so this is the kind of thing that, you see women are very dogmatic about certain things, and especially social issues. They have this proclivity towards social justice. Yeah. And social justice is not always justice, right? Sometimes social justice is a social construct. And it's funny that the people who want to say everything is a social construct can't see that, but I'll leave that.
No, I think that's a great point. I just want to kind of reiterate because I think it's just like I mentioned, an uncomfortable truth, small plug, shameless plug, is that once again, like, and Tim Pool talked about this, like, once again, women still, for the majority, still vote overwhelmingly liberal, especially college educated, these liberal campuses, to where progressive is king overall. So I think we have to start realizing that it's not like the majority of these women are just afraid to speak up. Is that they're actually good with it because they've been through the whole schooling of no prayer in the schools, of just the LGBTQ agenda just being kind of pushed to where they had maybe, like I said, one or two gay best friends since middle school. And they, girls go to the bathroom together and they kind of like just like to have the togetherness and camaraderie and talking and all that versus men having the sort of go out and hunt competition. Hey, I'm here to win. Rip your throat out. I'm not saying women are competitive. I'm saying as a majority, as a whole, men have a more one-track mind. What is the mission? I'm here to provide, go out and hunt. And when it comes to sports, they're more focused on the winning aspect. And I think there's just a majority of women, both in and outside of athletics, where it's all about more about the camaraderie. That's why I think we're seeing more the women not speaking up. It's more so they're okay with it. And it's not just, oh, I'm afraid to speak up. I think that's kind of a reality that we might have to start dealing with, you know.
And you know, there's another aspect of this
Yeah.
that we should consider is that some women need to realize, listen, there are things that are designated for men, and there are things that women shouldn't be participating in when it comes to sports. For example, you know, we're talking about fencing, but swords were designed for male use. I mean, you never had in the history of the world a female gladiator. Okay? You never had that. Why? Because that was a man thing. Okay? I hate to even see women boxing. I hate to see it. Why? Because a woman, but you got these hardcore chicks who want to do everything that a man can do. You know, you heard that saying, anything a man can do, I can do. No, you can't. You're not built for it. You know, this is why you never see a woman trying to be in the NFL as a running back. Can you imagine any woman putting on a football uniform and trying to go against Lawrence Taylor? Could you imagine that?
Everything isn't for everybody. I call it, Jason Whitlock over at Fearless. He says it like everything isn't for everybody.
It's not.
And that's the thing when we're this delusional society. And we could stay on this culture war topic forever, probably start wrapping it up. But yeah, you guys are just, it's just this is just kind of the insanity we're in, where you have to have legislation passed to say that man is a woman. Men can't compete against a woman in sports. But like I said, that the women who tend to once again lean more liberal, they have big hearts, they're emotional. It's a man's world. Won't be nothing without a woman. All right, we love women, but they tend to, when they have those big hearts, they tend to be more pro-war. Once again, that explains why a lot of the leaning liberal women they were cheering on the Ukraine war. They were cheering on Obama, who continued Bush's war agenda. And it's just all about safety. Is why with COVID, women overall skewed more toward COVID, being COVID risk averse. They were more about wearing the mask, and if the woman was kind of holding the household and there wasn't a father in the home, most likely that woman was scared to death of COVID. Best believe everybody in that family, all the little kids down to the baby, are wearing masks. They're not going outside, and they're vaccine boosted. So women just tend to, once again, I'm not trying to bash. I'm just saying that overall, just how men, we got our faults, but women overall, they lean more liberal towards safety, towards security, toward togetherness. It'd be cool to have a gay best friend, or, it'd be great to compete with them because we're together. We're open-minded. We're virtuous. And that just bleeds into kind of where we are now, where women, unfortunately, are kind of, they're voting their rights away. They're voting themselves out of existence. Not just voting, but just passively erasing themselves out of existence through the passive liberal think. But that's all I got, y'all. Any other thoughts before we wrap up the topic? That's all I got.
Men should be men. Women should be women. We should bring back masculinity and femininity. And the two should never cross.
I think I agree, but I think this even links back to the last conversation about corporate greed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You destabilize families, you destabilize households and communities, and you have the opportunity to exploit more people through labor, taxation, and all this other stuff. So there are unique differences between men and women. And this is what I think is also kind of like the contradiction in feminism, right? Because feminists say that women are just as good as men or whatever, or what men are bad or the patriarchy is bad. But then they want to express themselves best by showing how much women can be men, how they can dress like men, how they can act like men, and how much that proves that somehow women are equal or capable, instead of what I feel like embracing the uniqueness of womanhood and femininity. And so, as you said, man, everything's not for everybody. I'm like 5'7.5", 5'8". I'm not going to make it in the NBA, right? I'm not going to be a wide receiver in the NFL. And so that's where I am in life, right? That wasn't what I had. Yeah. And so I think there's so much stigma with that, though, for people to accept that there are things that are better suited for all of us. And there's no shame in that. Some stuff is better suited for all of us. And everything's not for everybody.
Shaq can't. I'm sorry, but Shaq can't be a horse jockey,
right?
And what Kevin Hart? I'm sorry, bro. Kevin Hart, you can't be in the NBA. We don't mind you. We mind you coming to the All-Star game every year, a little celebrity match, but you're not going to the Lakers. Everything isn't for everybody,
and that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, land our plane there. All right, y'all. Next topic we got to get into Elon Musk DOGE. We were going to talk about originally last week, Elon Musk being out at DOGE. I think that was kind of like something that maybe the media was more so kind of hyping up. I think he's on his way out from being like more of the front and center of it. But there's been a lot of Social Security fraud coming out. And of course, the mainstream media, they're already trying to run cover on it. But basically, apparently, there's people. They found out a bunch of people were listed under Social Security born 100 years from now, getting payments. We already had people that were listed a few weeks ago, 100, 120 years old, long dead, still collecting payments. Where is this money going? Where is the funneling going? And I think it's very interesting. I think I forgot, somebody had mentioned, or maybe I saw it online. Obviously Jasmine Crockett. Why do they call her Crockett shit? Jasmine Crockett shit. Sorry, YouTube. But I think her part of her campaign. I don't know, conspiracy brother, you mentioned that she was funded. Part of her kind of platform, and she was funded by Sam Bankman-Fried of the FTX fiasco. And it's funny how many of these politicians are just sort of so anti-Doge. And it's like, well, what are you guys trying to uncover? Why are you so anti-Doge? Why are you, Jasmine, like railing against possible $5,000 stipend checks getting sent out to Americans? I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. I think 5,000 is too low. But why would you rail against that, Jasmine Crockett? So once again, these are just the latest revelations of Doge, of this Social Security fraud. Of course, you got NPR claiming they're not biased. They got the CEO NPR going on. They're already pushing back. Oh, there's nothing here. Oh, So go ahead, whoever wants to. Pastor Green, you go first. What are your thoughts on this latest Doge Social Security revelation that mainstream media is trying to cover up?
Yeah, this is how these illegals obtain Social Security benefits.
Yep.
Because all these illegals are getting Medicaid. They're getting Social Security, along with Social Security numbers that are fraudulent. So the millions of people that Doge has discovered that's on Social Security, why Social Security numbers are at that level, is because these illegals are getting Social Security benefits. And keep in mind the travesty of this. The average American that applies for Social Security disability has to go through a court procedure. But yet, these illegals, they come in this country and it's part of their package of coming here. And that should outrage everybody. Because you got people, Americans on Social Security, that can't even get it unless they have unless they go to court 3 to 4 times to get a hearing. And God forbid, if the money is miscalculated, it has to be paid back by who? The person that's receiving that disability or Social Security. That don't apply to migrants. Migrants can just get this money, get these taxpayer funds with no accountability whatsoever. No risk of being called to pay it back. How many people, I mean, you could talk to the average American and they can tell you of someone who's been denied Social Security or had to pay it back, even though they got it through legitimate means because they had a disability. And because they went to work with that disability, they found a job to supplement their Social Security. Now they have to pay it back. These migrants these illegals are getting money hand over fist, no matter what. And it's a travesty that they're on Social Security. And this is why they're saying that Social Security will be insolvent by 2040. Why? Because you got all these illegals getting Social Security benefits. And DOGE has exposed it. And not only has DOGE exposed that, they're also exposing the fact that there's a lot of kickback. And this is why they want Elon Musk gone. So they'll gladly put out an article saying Elon Musk is leaving DOGE because that's their wishful thinking. But I think enough has been revealed that some handcuffs are forthcoming on many people. And I yield.
Bars. Great point, conspiracy brother. Give us a talk, give us your take on DOGE, on Social Security, illegal migrants, all this foolishness.
Oh, there was actually a YouTube video I was looking at. The intelligence in the comments. There was actually a comment. I mean, the video I was going to look at on YouTube, I guess there was more arrests due to the Social Security fraud. But yeah, you know, I'm one of those people. I used to think, oh yeah, you know, it's great if we make it easier for people to have access to voting. And when I say access, I meant like, you know, oh, if you don't need a ID, that's okay. If you have other ways to verify. I used to think this like, you know, years ago. And what I realized is, one, like we're one of the only countries who does something like this. Like even Canada, they don't do that. Like in Canada, they don't have vote by mail unless it's like, I think for extreme, like you got to be bedridden and like medically, you know, it's got to be medical necessity. But in a lot of countries, you're not even able to vote without verifying your identification day of at the location of voting. And so I'm using that as an example of, you know, the citizenship thing. Like I know in Michigan there was talk about trying to pass a law, and I think they already have it in New York, and they were trying to actually even do it for voting, but a law where you would be able to get a license to drive even if you were illegal. And again, like I've said before, I know of like if you're a foreign tourist, if you have an American driver's license, they do a lot of them. They'll do like a reciprocal license procedure where, you know, you've got a license in your home country, your license is valid in this country. But if you are here illegally, that should all be out the door. But why would you want a person who is illegal to be able to drive? And they say, well, you know, they it allows them to get back and forth to work. And I'm sitting here like, why are they working? Why are they going to school? Like, what are you doing, bro? You're illegal. You shouldn't be. You should be laying low. You should be in the house.
Conspiracy brother, I gotta tap in because once again, your quote, we gotta get this on a shirt. As a non-citizen, you should be a non-issue.
Right.
And
right.
I want to give a shout out to also Ben Intelligent, a friend of the show, has been a guest on the show. Is in the chat. Our money, illegals have the reparations. Yep, they've been kind of eating off our benefits for the last few years now. And then Ben Intelligent also said deep state Marxists take advantage of old school liberals' big hearts. Exactly. Yeah. Back to you, conspiracy brother.
But yeah, you know what I'm saying? What are you talking about? They have to drive to work. Like, no, bro. You don't have to go nowhere. Go home.
Sit your ass down.
Go home. That's where you got to go. What are you talking about? And it's the thing that's crazy for me. Like, I've had a lot of relatives that have been in and out of the prison system. And nobody ever. I had an uncle. He had his 3-year-old son with him. And he was he's a mechanic. And so his son is like 20 something now, 21 or something like that now. Hard to remember because I'm getting so much older and time starts to just pass by. He's 20 something, but his son was 3 at the time. And my uncle is a felon, had been to jail a few times, but was out. He was with his son, you know, really turning his life around and raising his son as a single parent. And he was working on a car or something, and the guy pulled a gun out on him or something like that. And my uncle pulled a gun out on the guy, like in retaliation and defense. But because he was a felon, you know, he couldn't have a gun. And so he went to prison for like 5 years, and his son ended up moving to Mississippi, a state that at that time he had never lived in, with his mother, right? Because he was staying here with my uncle and, you know, in Michigan. And nobody gave any consideration to the length of time that he was cleaning his life up, that he was making changes, that he was trying to be a better person. Nobody cared. He was a criminal who committed another crime, and he went to prison for like 5 years or more. Okay. And so this is how they treat people. This is how they treat American citizens. You know, Black American citizens, I don't know if you want to say, or all Americans, whatever. This is how my uncle was treated. They didn't try to make a special carve out, not to tear his family apart because he committed a crime. They didn't have any special consideration because it was self-defense. They didn't take into account that for the 3 years that he was a parent, he was had a clean nose and was out of trouble, and you know, was trying to be a model citizen for his son and a productive member of this community. That was not a consideration. And so, you know, when you look at this, there has to be some kind of globalist agenda behind all this. Everywhere around the world, you see and hear and read about falling birth rates, and simultaneously you hear and see about a need for immigration. How does that make sense? How does it make sense that you tell us that birth rates are falling within all these various countries, even in the United States, but South Korea, Japan, right? Let's see, be intelligent. I remember when illegals became eligible to receive financial aid. I was like, now we know where they live. We can go deport them, right? Which, you know, which I don't understand. How can you receive financial aid into a system you haven't paid into? Now, maybe, you know, for private schools, I'm a little, I mean, they still receive federal monies because they get tax breaks. They're treated as nonprofits. So, you know, that's a tax break. But so maybe I'm a little, you know, little less upset about that. But at least for state colleges and universities, how do you receive financial aid? And let's say, oh, they pay sales tax. I don't care. They're not paying income tax. Because if they were paying income tax, even if they weren't, they're illegal. I don't care. I don't care. You're still taking out more than you give.
And conspiracy, bro, I want to point out something that you said, and this is why Democrats talk out both sides of their mouths. You know, when the Democrats talking about voting rights, they're not talking about black people. They're talking about giving these illegals voting rights. And think about this. When a person is a convicted felon, what do they lose? Their right to vote. And you don't hear the Democrats saying nothing about it. But yet, they want to march and pass legislation to give illegals the right to vote. And these illegals have been doing so in this country with the help of the Democrats. So, you know, this is what infuriates me with black people that supports Democrats. That black people who support Democrats are just useful idiots, in my opinion. Because if a felon loses his right to vote, how can an illegal who is a criminal also get the right to vote? So we need to balance these books and make it make sense. If a person has served their time and they paid their debt to society, they should get the right to vote again. But yet the Democrats won't fight for that right. And this is why many black people cannot participate in the political process. But yet you want to bring millions of illegals here to vote Democrat. And black people in the Democratic Party who support Democrats, they're contributing to their own demise politically. And they need to wake up. And I yield.
Whew, that part. Conspiracy brother. Anything else you want to add? I'm good to go.
No, I think Pastor Green really summed that up. The Intelligence says community college. Yeah, I don't care what kind of school it is, you know. But it's a deliberate, some kind of deliberate action to undermine the American people. The same way we talked about the judges earlier. When you undermine the American people, you undermine American society. You can import people who have a different ideology than that of Americans, and so they'll allow corrupt laws at the top to be passed, or they'll interpret law in a way that contradicts the Constitution because they don't have a deference to American ideals, the spirit of Americanism, right? And then you'll have illegals come up who, because they don't have an appreciation for what it means to be an American, apart from being able to work and be paid a wage above, 5 cents a day or whatever, you're just happy to have water breaks every so often and to be able to go to the bathroom. You'll do whatever they tell you to do as long as they don't send you back. And so you'll undermine American workers and American people and America in that way. And so it's all working together to undermine society and the social order for the globalist agenda. And again, with these tariffs, so it's nice how this episode really kind of flows into itself. With these tariffs, hopefully this undermines the globalist agenda and it really shakes up the global order in a way that has long-lasting reverberations, even if people can't appreciate it, right? Even if people on opposite sides of the political aisle in other countries, who I really couldn't care less about, can't appreciate what these tariffs may do. Hopefully they do what I hope they can do to undermine the globalist agenda, because every country should be able to have sovereignty to do and make decisions on its own. And the people within that country, especially at least us in America, maybe everybody else is fine to bend over and take it from the WEF and the WHO and George Soros and Bill Gates. But I think a lot of Americans, not most of us maybe, because we saw what happened during COVID, but a lot of us are tired of it. And so I'm one of them.
All right. I couldn't have summed it up any better, Conspiracy Brother. All right, moving on, y'all. Next topic. Once again, guys, thanks for tuning in to Uncomfy Truths. You can follow us on Rumble. We're also on YouTube as well as Odyssey. Last topic for us to wrap up tonight, episode 43. Hands off. Hands off my Social Security, Elon. Hands off, Trump, my precious illegal migrants. Hands off my trans rights. Uh, April 5th was, I guess, the left's new Earth Day or the left's new May Day rally day, But everybody got out there, Obviously, Tesla tax had kind of died down a bit. That was going to be one of our topics last week, but now they've graduated to hands off. So they got a semi-consistent message. So it's underneath this whole umbrella. Hands off, Doge, hands off everything, and it's just amazing to me just how warped you can be to really get whipped into fighting for the establishment. Long gone are long days of Rage Against the Machine. Don't you tell me what to do. Wake up. It's just like, no, the left is just, for the most part, fully for the establishment and uniparty. And they're, and I think it's very interesting. I think Tim Pool covered some of this on a lot of these. I think there was a video that came out where literally, and I know a lot of these NGOs, they fund a lot of these protests where I don't think each person there's actually paid up front. What they do is you sign up on the website. There was a website through, I think, Indivisible. Indivisible's been this group that's been linked to Soros funding, where basically people can go to the website. I think they took some screenshots before they took the website down when they got exposed. But basically, this group's up to 200 could sign up on this website. They get a travel voucher, I think a room and board voucher, bus voucher. They get bused to these areas, and they're highly coordinated. So these aren't grassroots, organic, we may be there, may not be there. It's like they all show up in these droves. And then I think there was a video, I forgot, I think somebody had covered it, where all of a sudden at like 3:00 or this certain time of the day, they all just left. Those guys that may be involved in activism organizations or organizing, it's like, if it's organic, a few people hear about it and then people file in and file out throughout the day. It's not like the bell rings or the horn goes off at the factory and then everybody just, gets off at once for lunch. But it's literally been that, and there's been a lot of exposing of these hands-off rallies of April 5th. And I got to give it to the left, that the left knows how to organize. The right still has to kind of work on that, but the left knows how to organize, even though it is just highly funded and coordinated and it's not organic at all. It's really just George Soros and left-wing billionaire oligarchies funding it, even though Bernie, AOC claim to rail against the oligarchies, except for the ones that are on their side. So I just find that very interesting. And also we got a couple more chats from Bintelligent. I don't know, Conspiracy Brother, you could kind of pop that on the screen. Bintelligent, you put our failure to educate voters to vote right is the problem. I was the California Republican convention, and it's on purpose. And then he also said Bernie and AOC came to LA to fundraise this week. Of course, they're on that Fight the Billionaire Oligarchy tour. And of course, it used to be Millionaire Oligarchy, but Bernie's net worth has gone up, unsurprisingly, in the Senate the last few years. So, of course, he has to change it to Billionaire Oligarchy because he's so against capitalism, but yet he's, profiteering hand and fist to the followers, still dumb enough to follow him. As a former Bernie bro, I have no problem throwing shade at that guy. But yeah, so this is once again the hands-off protest that they're trying to be the new summer 2020, summer of love. They want to be the new BLM, and it's not as organic, it is natural as you think, and there's a lot of swampy leftist ties. So Pastor Green, real quick, give us your thoughts on this little mass temper tantrum happening all over the country this past Saturday.
What we're seeing is too many people are like lemons going off a cliff. That little gerbil-like creature that every year or every few years for some reason, unknown
Mhm.
reason, they run off cliffs right into the sea and drown themselves.
I'll
Well,
do you one better. There was this old game called the Lemmings. It's like a PlayStation game, little lemmings you had to take care of. They'll just walk around, they'll fall right off of a cliff. Kind of like sea monkeys or whatever it is. But
Mhm.
the lemon reference. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's unfortunately what too many in America have become, because brainwashing is real, and it depends on who controls the narrative. So we know that the left, they control the mainstream media. So people are hearing constantly lies right in their face, and yet rather than challenge, they've been told to accept it, not think for themselves. So, the mainstream media comes up with terms like conspiracy theory. You see, where they tell you don't think for yourself. But the thing about it, it's been to our detriment as a society. It's come to a detriment as a country. And it takes intelligent talk that's going to undo this. And this is why they want to silence Doge. This is why they want to silence Elon Musk. This is why they don't want Donald Trump saying anything. And so now, what's been the most productive way of countering the nonsense is that you don't listen to mainstream media, but now you listen to other social media content creators who are telling the truth. And I think that there's going to a day of reckoning is here already with the mainstream media, with the powers that be who've been lying in our faces for so long without blinking. We've seen that through COVID. We see that right now. They say, oh, leave my Social Security alone. Listen, Social Security is in jeopardy because of the misuse and the abuse, and those who want to expose it are being opposed by mainstream Americans. And we also see the lunacy in so many Americans. It's the left that's always resorting to violence when you don't agree to them.
Yep.
You don't see conservatives acting like this. They try to use terms like white supremacy and things like that. I don't see it. I don't see no white supremacy. I see too much brainwash people, both black and white. And unfortunately, a lot of this is coming from black people again, because see, the Democrats, it seems like they just put a control switch in their brains that they could turn off and they could turn on. And we're seeing the results, but over these next 2 years, I believe we're going to see a great change in this country where people are going to wake up, because facts are facts and truth is truth. So, one thing you could do with truth, you could tear truth up into 1,000 pieces, but when you put it back, but it'll always come back together again. You could distort it now, but it'll always come back. And I believe we're going to see the results of this. And when we see the results of this, I believe we're going to see the end of the Democratic Party.
Oh yeah. And shout out Ben Intelligent, the tolerant left, the clown emoji. So yeah, once again, I'm not for censoring their speech. Obviously, I'm not like breaking up their protests. They have the right to go out and protest. For the most part, they look peaceful. Obviously, they're not peaceful people, but at least they didn't, one just like riots and looting and destroying black neighborhoods, with white liberals running around doing it. But at the same time, like, it's just keep exposing yourself. Like, their hypocrisy, I say this over and over again, their selective outrage always exposes their hypocrisy. Even a little overweight woman holding the sign, the only minority destroying this country are billionaires. Yeah, so where was your energy for Bill Gates, who had a monopoly billionaire oligarchy over big tech in the 90s with Microsoft and his antitrust suits? Then in 2009, he takes $100 million and decides to buy his way into healthcare, philanthropy, funding up starting MSNBC. So you had this guy that took over big tech, then he took over and bought a seat at the table with the WHO and healthcare, pushing the vaccines, and of course finding MSNBC and taking over a large source of media. Where's your smoke for that billionaire? Where's smoke for that billionaire oligarch, or the George Soroses, or Mark Zuckerberg, who was censoring throughout the Trump administration, propping up Barack Obama throughout his 8 years? Where's the smoke for those billionaire oligarchies, my overweight leftist friend? But anyway, let me not get on another tangent. Conspiracy brother, your thoughts on this hands-off leftist circle jerk?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is just all it's all like AstroTurf. You know, all these people are being paid.
Yep. Manufactured.
And like you said, you didn't care about the billionaires 4 years ago. You didn't care about Mark Zuckerberg. You didn't care about Jeff Bezos because he still owns the Washington Post. He wasn't.
Yep.
He wasn't. The Washington Post wasn't a neutral arbiter in the media, political media space. Twitter, Jack Dorsey. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but Twitter under Jack Dorsey in its final days was censoring American citizens before Elon Musk took over. And like, I want this to be clear for those who haven't watched. I think it was episode 2. We talked about Elon Musk. I don't even like him like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really don't even like dude like that. But this idea that billionaires are only the, you know what I'm saying? Like you said, Bernie stopped saying millionaires and stuff because he's a millionaire now. I guess for him, millionaires can't be a problem. You know what I mean? Nah, bro. I'm a reformed Bernie bro myself. And I think he's a clown. And I never was into Alexandria Cortez. I could see through her immediately. So I never was on her hype train. I always knew she was a clown. I always knew there was something fishy about her. So yeah, man, this is clearly, to me, this is all organized because, you know, you don't have these kind of flags and banners and stuff professionally made. And you don't organize a mass across the country protest like this. But again, you didn't do anything like this during COVID lockdowns for all the people who lost their jobs because they wanted to exercise their right to not be vaccinated, to not, you know, take to take an experimental gene therapy, right? You didn't want to do that. And so it's just all weird stuff. You know what I'm saying? This is very transparent to me. These people are very obviously paid. And I don't know how people still take the mainstream media. You see a Ukraine flag in the background. Like, man, get out of here. Anybody who still supports the whole Ukraine situation, given what we've learned, I never was on board with it because I always knew Ukraine was like the most corrupt country in Europe, which says a lot because, you know, like I always thought like Bulgaria and Romania were just like almost impenetrably corrupt. And so to find out that Ukraine is actually the most corrupt and one of the most in the world, when you know, Latin America is like, that's kind of like the like Africa, that's like the stereotype of those countries and regions is just to be corrupt. That says a lot. So no, these people are just they're even if they're only being paid, I feel like even in the age of OnlyFans, you have to have something that you're willing to say no to, even if it's for money. You know what I'm saying? And so I wouldn't even give them a pass if they're being paid. I feel like in America we're reaching a point of no return in a lot of ways. Friendships will be broken, relationships will be irreparably harmed. And I don't know, is the country too big? Is the experiment over with? A lot of countries have had a lot of civil wars and stuff throughout history. In Europe and stuff, there have been multiple civil wars for a lot of countries. And I think sometimes in this modern era, we try to behave as though we have transcended human emotion and normal human sentiments. And so I think it's entirely possible that and at some point this could happen. And so I think we need to be mindful of that. I think it's possible that they're trying to foment some type of social unrest that would create the circumstances for some type of external force to come in and intervene within our internal politics. And we need to be mindful of that as well. So this is all a bunch of malarkey. I was driving around on the 5th. I think that's a Monday. Is that a Monday? Was that Monday or Sunday?
No, it was this past Saturday, I think. Well, no,
okay, last Saturday.
It was a week from last Saturday. Yep.
Yeah, so I was just driving around minding my business like a normal day because I have better things to do. And I saw some people out actually on the freeway overpass with banners and stuff. And I'm sitting here like, what is it? What are they doing? Like, it's cold outside. What are y'all doing? What are y'all goofballs doing? You know what I'm saying? We got better things to do in Michigan. We got bigger problems than Elon Musk, right? We got bigger problems. And so, I'm not surprised, but disappointed nonetheless. So,
well, like I say, time and time again, the left's selective outrage always exposes their hypocrisy. And I've been proven right over and over again. All right, y'all. Our final topic. No, this was our final topic, actually. We're at 5. So obviously here, those of you guys been following the show for a while. We used to have these 3-4 hour shows, but we getting a little more condensed, more focused, big picture topics. But yeah, that's it. That's the last 5 topics. I like to go around the horn, maybe really quick. Any other final thoughts anybody wants to think on the events going on this week before we have Pastor Green pray us out?
Well, I really want to look at the hypocrisy again of the Democrats. When you hear Adam Schiff say, "Oh, well, we need to have an investigation on whether or not what Trump did was insider trading." Are you serious?
I broke out in glee. I'm like, yes, he just opened the can of worms. Let's get them all.
Yeah.
Get them.
Yeah. Let's have that investigation starting with you guys. How you go from $175,000 a year to $20 million? How is that even possible?
Shiffy Skiff.
And let's not even talk about Nancy Pelosi.
Oh yeah, OG.
So, the hypocrisy is just insane. But I'm glad he opened up that can of worms because, yes, let's have that investigation.
Please. All right, Conspiracy Brother, any parting thoughts before we pray out and call it a night? Episode 43 in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I'd like to see how the tariffs continue to play out. Like I said, even if they don't work out exactly perfectly well, at least you have a president in office who is pretending to care about average Americans, working class Americans for a change, instead of a president like Barack Obama who tells you that all the jobs, that policies that him and his predecessors promoted and signed off on that shipped your jobs overseas will not be coming back. So all those jobs, he said, he got up there and said that the jobs won't be coming back, and had no alternative for working class Americans. And so, that's unacceptable in a country where you have 300 million people and you are importing low skilled labor for you to say that there are no jobs available when there are people who you are bringing into this country to work jobs. And then, again with Elon, just to show that I don't like him so much, he tells you on the top part, on the low, the Democrats tell you on the low end, hey, the different like your homegirl Jasmine Crockett said, we don't want to pick cotton. Black people don't want to pick cotton. Right. Black people don't want to pick cotton. We got to bring in immigrants, I guess, to pick cotton. I don't know. And then
I shared that meme. I shared that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I shared that meme in the group chat, and it's a meme basically of the meme character like an 1800s outfit, and it says Democrat 1850s, but without slaves, who would pick my crops? And then below that is like a modern kind of like white liberal white dude for Harris, like it says Democrats 2020s, but without illegal migrants, who will pick my crops?
Right.
It's like the same game.
And then, Elon and Vivek talked about how, India, and we went over this, India has a superior culture, so they're better suited for doing engineering jobs. So, I mean, it's a struggle on both ends for American citizens to survive in a country that they're citizens of, but we do what we do, and we fight the fight that we have. And I'm not giving up, and I know you brothers aren't giving up, and I hope the majority of our listeners aren't giving up. But that's what I have.
Yep, not giving up till the wheels fall off. They're going to have to take me down kicking and screaming. So that's that part. All right, y'all. Great show. Pastor Green, if you do us the honors and kind of pray us out, we can get out of here.
Absolutely. Lord, we just thank you for this time of coming together. Father God, I pray, Lord, that ears have been opened and eyes have been opened and minds elevated to what truth is and to what lies are. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. We got one more comment from Intelligent, about to wrap up here. Pick cotton for $40 an hour in modern work benefits and labor protections. Amen. All right, y'all. Thanks for coming out. We're out of here. Episode 43 in the bag. We should be back. All is well. Don't quote us, but on the 27th. So next week's obviously Easter. Everybody have a great Easter holiday, Resurrection Sunday. He is risen, Jesus. And then we'll be back the week after Easter on Sunday the 27th. So y'all have a good one. Stay blessed.
Peace.
God bless. Good night.